Welcome to our deep dive into the shifting geopolitical landscape of North America. Tonight, we are analyzing a massive pivot in Canadian policy. For decades, the relationship between Canada and the United States was the gold standard of integrated trade. But the world has changed. The U.S. implementing tariffs not seen since the Great Depression and global instability reaching a fever pitch, Ottawa is launching a radical new strategy, Canada Strong. This is a plan to move away from American dependency and toward total national self-reliance. To understand the gravity of this shift, we need to look at the leadership behind it. The philosophy driving this change isn't just about politics. It's about a fundamental reassessment of economic stability and national ambition.
I know from experience that outside forces can sometimes seem overwhelming. My previous jobs at the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, it was part of my duties to make regular public reports on what we were doing to manage the economy. And I remember during the financial crisis, when there was a real risk of panic, I developed a practice called forward guidance. It was designed to assure people that however difficult the situation seemed on any given day, that we were acting, and importantly, that we would continue to act with overwhelming force against our problems until they were solved. And that's the spirit I'm talking to you about today. Security can't be achieved by ignoring the obvious or downplaying the very real threats that we Canadians face. I promise you, I will never sugarcoat our challenges. Instead, I will talk with you directly and regularly about our plan, why we're doing what we're doing, what's working, what isn't.
That sentiment sets the stage for what is being called the most ambitious economic overhaul in Canadian history. The Canada Strong Plan is a direct response to the attack on Canadian workers in the automotive, aluminum, steel, and lumber industries. These sectors, once the backbone of cross-border trade, are now in the crosshairs of unprecedented American protectionism. For years, the Canadian economy operated on the assumption that the border would remain open and predictable. That assumption is dead. Business leaders who once looked south for growth are now paralyzed by uncertainty. The government's response is to stop waiting for a return to normal. They are arguing that hope is not a plan and nostalgia is not a strategy. If we look at the timeline of the 21st century, Canadian youth have been battered by shock after shock. The Iraq War, the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, and now, a trade war with their closest neighbor. The message from Ottawa is clear. Canada can no longer bet its future on a single partner. We must control what happens within our own borders. The center of this plan is a staggering financial goal, catalyzing $1 trillion in new investments. This isn't just a stimulus package, it's a complete restructuring of the national grid. The government intends to double the size of Canada's clean energy capacity and open new trade corridors that bypass the United States entirely, reaching into 4 different continents with over 20 new trade agreements signed in just the last year. But this strategy also looks backward to find a path forward. It draws inspiration from the War of 1812 and the figures who defended Canadian soil long before Confederation was even a concept. Think of General Isaac Brock, a hero who gave his life to defend these borders against American expansionism. His legacy, along with figures like Tecumseh and the Voltigeurs, serves as a psychological foundation for this modern movement. The government is using this history to remind citizens that Canada was forged in the face of an impossible climate and a formidable neighbor. Now, let's look at the deep analysis of the energy and infrastructure sectors. This is where the Canada Strong initiative moves from rhetoric to hard assets. The goal is to build a country that resists foreign perturbations by creating a vast network of global allies while being self-sufficient at home. This deep analysis brings us to the most controversial part of the plan, the massive increase in defense spending. For the first time since the fall of the Berlin Wall, Canada is significantly ramping up its military investment. This is the largest annual increase in defense spending in generations. The target? to meet NATO defense spending goals 5 years ahead of the original schedule. The Canada Strong strategy expects to catalyze over $500 billion in defense-related investments over the next decade. The mission is simple: rebuild, rearm, and reinvest. They are treating national security as an industry, one that supports jobs while protecting sovereignty. While the grand strategy focuses on global trade and military might, the government is also trying to manage the immediate cost of living. They claim that by making Canada less dependent on the U.S. for things like housing and energy, prices will eventually stabilize. Already, the government points to a new national agency for affordable housing, inspired by post-World War II projects like the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Trans-Canada Highway. They report that average rent across the country is at its lowest in nearly 3 years, though many Canadians on the ground might still feel the pinch. To provide immediate relief, tax cuts for 22 million middle-class Canadians have been implemented, alongside a permanent national school food program that feeds 400,000 children. These social programs, dental care, pharmacare, and affordable child care, are being framed as essential infrastructure for a resilient workforce. The government is betting that if they can provide a social safety net, the population will have the audacity to participate in this new aggressive economic offensive. They want Canadians to buy Canadian, invest in Canada, and discover Canada. As we look toward the future, the question remains: can Canada truly decouple its destiny from the United States? The road ahead will be filled with international disruptions and inevitable delays. However, the current administration is doubling down, insisting that the foundation of a shared history and a hard-working, highly educated population will be enough to bridge the gap to a self-reliant tomorrow. The Canada Strong initiative is more than a policy shift. It is a declaration of economic independence. Whether it can achieve the trillion-dollar investment goal or successfully pivot away from the American orbit will be the defining story of this decade. In the coming weeks and months, the impact of these defense hikes and trade corridors will become more visible. For now, the message from the leadership is clear. Canada is no longer waiting for permission to lead. They are taking the wheel. Thank you for joining us for this special report. We will continue to follow these developments as they unfold. Good night.